Hello there everybody and welcome back to Movie Squirm. Now today is going to be, in my opinion, the best horror movies from A to Z. Just a little bit of fun in this video, something a little bit different and just one that I felt like doing. So if any of you guys agree, disagree, please let me know down in the comments and what would your pick be for each one of these letters. So let's just get into it now with the first letter of the alphabet, of course, and that is A. First up, we have Alien, which is a tension-fueled horror nightmare in space. And this follows a group of characters who receive a distress signal. So they go and check it out and they find this planet with life forms on there. And one of them gets back onto the ship and it's up to Ripley to stop this absolute killer machine in this xenomorph. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen the xenomorph, the design of it and stuff, even if you haven't seen the movie. But this thing is running rampant and just taking all these people out one by one. Got a brilliant chest burst scene opening in this movie where, you know, the life form, actually, we see it for the first time. I would have loved to see that in the cinema back in 1979 when this movie was really came to fruition. And I was just thinking, wow, man, that is one of the greatest moments in movie history, in horror movie history, you know, to be more accurate. Ripley is a great final girl who is just awesome in this, you know, absolute powerhouse of a female lead. And the movie just really does take its time to build up and then just let loose. So Alien, I mean, I would put Aliens in there, but I do think that's more of an action-filled movie. But Alien is probably in my top 10 horror movies of all time, and I had to put it in there for A, so that is Alien. Next up, we have the Blair Witch Project. And now this is a movie that absolutely terrified me as a kid. I couldn't sleep the night I watched it. It just felt so real to me back in 1997, I believe it was. And this follows a group of documentary makers, filmmakers who are going to investigate this urban legend of this witch in these woods, and it's all done with found footage. And slowly but surely they start to see things in these woods. Things are happening around them that are unexplained and they are just lost. They can't get out of these damn woods, and this thing is sort of lurking over them, and it's all done very, very well with the found footage. I mean, this is how it should be executed, especially for the time. I know I hadn't seen anything like this before. It felt so real to me. And it's just simple things like a bunch of rocks that they wake up to outside their tent and little symbols that have been made out of the trees and stuff. It's just all terrifying, man. I mean, I couldn't sleep that night. Like I said, I was sweating. I was just like, oh my God, this is the scariest thing I've ever seen. And to this day, I don't think a film has ever scared me as much as this. So I got to put it in there for B. And I watched it with my wife a couple of years ago. She'd never seen it, and it did actually scare her as well. So it is probably effective for a lot more people as well to this day and age, even though found footage has kind of flooded the horror genre. But, man, this is the first one I seen, and it just frightened the life out of me. So that is Blair Witch Project. For C, we do have Candyman. This is another movie that scared me as a kid. And this follows Virginia Madsen's character, Helen, who's investigating the urban legend of Candyman, who's this young kid who was stung by a bunch of bees and left to die, basically, by the townsfolk. And he was kind of a slave back in the day and stuff. And if you say his name 5 times in the mirror, he will come and get you, basically. Helen does this, and her life starts to descend into a spiral of madness and basically a living nightmare, and everything around it is just going wrong, and this Tony Todd character will not let her go of his grasp. And Tony Todd plays the Candyman brilliantly. He's got like this really hypnotic voice, one that you just draws you in.
Be my victim. Be my victim.
And he's quite terrifying with this hook on his hand and stuff. There's some really brutal moments in this movie. There's blood and gore, a lot of it on the screen. At one moment, Helen even wakes up in a pool of blood. So yeah, it's a pretty damn brutal film from the imagination of Clive Barker, but it's got such a great story attached to it, and it is just a pure horror film. So one of the greatest horror films ever made, in my opinion. That is Candyman. For D, we do have Dawn of the Dead, the greatest zombie movie of all time, in my opinion. And this follows a bunch of characters who go to this location of a shopping mall during a zombie outbreak. And they hole up there and have this shopping mall as their playground. And this is one of my favorite things about the entire film. The location, probably one of my favorite locations in any movie ever. I just love the way they've got all these shops to themselves and stuff like that. But eventually things do go bad for them when the zombies are kind of taking over the mall and this biker gang comes in. The zombies aren't really the least of their worries. And, you know, good things always don't last forever, do they? But George A. Romero really put in a fun time here. And it is definitely his best movie, in my opinion. I do think the zombies could have looked a little bit better, but I'm willing to excuse that for just how fun and entertaining this movie is. I really love seeing Keenan Rockmore's dad. God, oh my God, Ken Forey just roaming around with this sniper rifle, man, just blasting zombies everywhere. I mean, what more do you want? So many great characters in this movie as well. All four of them are characters characters that you like to get behind, basically. So, Dawn of the Dead, an excellent zombie film for D. For E, we do have The Exorcist, a movie I have actually reviewed on this channel leading up to The Exorcist Believer, which isn't a patch on this movie, by the way. And I've watched this a few times now, but every time I see it, its genius grows on me. It just gets a little bit better each time. And the last time I watched it, I really did see a damn near masterpiece, in my opinion. So yeah, it's a movie that's really grew. And this follows Regan, who is obviously possessed by this demon called Pazuzu. And people don't really know what's going on with her. You know, they're kind of doctors and stuff can't really figure it out, but she has actually been possessed, and there's only one thing for it: to call these priests in to do an exorcism on her to try and get this demon out of her, because all bad things are happening around her. There's people dying and everything. But I really like how Regan's arc, like she's starting to act a bit weird, then she's getting scars on her face, then she just turned into this absolutely fully fledged monster. And she's such a sweet, innocent girl at the start of the movie as well. It's kind of hard to believe that's the same actress. Got Regan McNeil, her mother, who is just, for me, probably the best part of this movie. Played by Ellen Burstyn. What a performance this is. She just wants the best for her daughter. She will not stop until this is sorted out. And I can see why people were terrified of this film back in the day. It's not really scary enough for me now, but there were certain moments that irked me a little bit, especially when Regan's head turned around and she'd done the voice of the drunk director, basically confirming that it was her who pushed him down the stairs. So yeah, I mean, it's an iconic horror movie, isn't it? There's so many great moments in this film. Definitely watch the director's cut for the spider scene walk going down the stairs. I do know why they cut it out now. It's because they couldn't really get rid of the hold up strings, but they've been able to do it digitally in future, so that has been removed now. And I'm sure William Friedkin wanted to put that in, but he just couldn't at the time. But an absolutely brilliant horror movie, that is The Exorcist. Next up, we have Frailty, which is a movie directed by Bill Paxton and starring Bill Paxton. Now, this is a pretty underrated horror gem. I recommend this movie to everybody who asks me what's a movie that I mightn't have seen. And this basically is about Bill Paxton's character, who is visited by this angel while he's at work, and he goes home to his two sons and says, "This angel has visited me and he wants me to do God's work, and we've got to go out and kill these demons who are disguised as humans." And one of the sons believes him, and the other one just thinks he's an absolute deranged lunatic, and you don't quite know whose side to be on. And they do in fact start going out and trying to take these people down. And my God, man, this is a movie that grips you from start to finish. I like the whole mystery aspect of it. There is a brilliant twist towards the end of the film. You're just like, holy shit, didn't see that coming. Bill Paxton is excellent in this movie. He's got a young Matthew McConaughey in there. And I don't want to say too much about it, but just go into this movie and just have a great time with something that you probably haven't seen too much of. It's a fantastic film. I highly recommend it. Next up, we do have Gerald's Game, one of my favourite Stephen King adaptations, to be honest, and one that is another pretty underrated film. It's a straight-to-Netflix movie, and this follows Gerald and his wife who go to this remote, like, cottage. They want to get away for the weekend and spice up their sex life a little bit, and Gerald ties his wife to the bed and has a heart attack, and she is just stuck there in the middle of nowhere. She can't get to her phone, she can't ask for help, she can't scream for help. She's just stuck there, and there may be something happening around this kind of this holiday home, basically, that is a little bit sinister and supernatural. And I like the way the movie goes back and forth between Gerald's wife's life and stuff, and shows how the stuff that she had to deal with as a kid. You know, it doesn't just all take place in this location. There is a backstory there, but there's some real sinister moments in the movie as well. And the ending, I was really freaked out by, I'm not going to lie. So I do recommend this movie. It's a very interesting one. That is Gerald's Game. Next up, we do have John Carpenter's Halloween. Now, I just want to give a couple of honorable mentions here because Hereditary and The Hitcher are two movies that are probably in my top 30 horror movies of all time, but I got to go with Halloween. John Carpenter's best film, in my opinion, a very simplified movie. It's just about a killer breaking out of a mental institute and coming back to the town he lives to kill off some babysitters. But everything in this film just works. The direction, the score, which is not just a great score, but it's played in all great moments in the movie as well. Kind of like used for jump scares here and there at times, where especially like when the kid runs into Michael after he drops the pumpkin and stuff, and other times where he's kind of stalking Laurie Strode down the streets and stuff. It just is worked to perfection. John Carpenter is with a masterful score there. There's something about this movie. Every time I watch it, it just gets better and better. It just grows on me. And sometimes simple is better. Not everything has to be too over the top and everything. But maybe it was just the time. We hadn't seen too many things like this before. But I really do think it captures the holiday of Halloween. You know, it does feel like it's an October movie for sure. And Michael Myers, one of the greatest horror movie icons, was born here, wasn't he? So I don't need to say too much more on Halloween. I'm sure all you guys have seen it. But in my top 5 horror movies of all time, surely. So that is Halloween. Next up, I'm cheating a little bit here because I've gone with a mini-series, but that is Stephen King's It. And I do feel like this is a movie to me. I didn't watch it back in the day on TV. I was too young. I just got the VHS and watched it as a full VHS, basically. And this is about Pennywise, played by Tim Curry, who stalks the children in the town of Derry in Maine, basically. And we do see each character's perspective. Like, there's 7 kids in this movie. And when they're adults, they get told that this Pennywise character has come back to haunt the town. Every 27 years, he seems to come back, and they have to go back and try and kill it. But it goes back to the past of each of these characters and how they dealt with this Pennywise character. And they've all got good little stories, you know, each one of them. And I'm always fascinated by each one and how they came to confront Pennywise themselves. And in the middle of the movie, they can't try and kill it. They think they've killed this Pennywise character, and it does come back. So they all have to come back to the town of Derry in the second part of the movie.
I'll kill you all. I'll drive you crazy, and I'll kill you all.
Now, a lot of people don't like the second part. They think it's way weaker than the first. And it is. But I do think some of the better moments happen in the second part, especially where Beverly Marsh goes to that woman's house, and she's like this old woman. And I was like, this is way better. She goes back to her old house, but this woman's living there, and then she kind of turns. I do think the makeup design and stuff is better than the It Chapter 2 remake. That just didn't work for me. I was like, what is that CGI mess? Like I said, sometimes simple is better. And the part where Bill's wife, Audrey, that's a creepy moment as well. So I do think the second, you know, where she confronts Pennywise and he's like, don't you want it? I think that second half is pretty good as well. I don't like the ending with the spider. That is ridiculous. One of the worst horror movie moments ever, in my opinion. Or one of the worst scenes in horror movies I like. Watch out for that video. That might be coming soon. But overall, I love this miniseries / movie. And Tim Curry is excellent in this. I do prefer him over Bill Skarsgård, of course. So that is the 1990 miniseries of It. Next up, we have Jaws for Jay. Questionable whether this is a horror movie or not, but for me, this is definitely a psychological horror movie because a lot of people were scared to go in the sea, and me included, even many years later when I watched it, because you just don't know what's under there, do you? And Jaws confirms that. Basically, you got this shark who's stalking this beach, basically, and people are starting to go missing, and they come to the conclusion that this great white shark is actually killing people at this little holiday resort, and there's a little bit of fight with the mayor and the Chief Brody there, whether they should keep the beaches open and stuff, but the mayor's like, no, there's too much money involved, so there's a good little political standoff there, and basically the second half of the film sees Chief Brody and these other two characters go out to kill this shark once and for all. And this is used to perfection with the score again, kind of like Halloween. You know, Steven Spielberg says 70% of this movie is because of John Williams' score, and it is a very simple score, but it's just done to perfection. It is excellent, and it ramps up and more the longer it goes on. It's a great shark movie. It's the best shark movie ever made, let's be honest, and one of the greatest films ever made. You know, there's a jump scare in this movie as well that you don't see coming whatsoever. And every time I watch it, I always forget about it, but man, it just totally works. Not like these generic ones we get every day here and there. So yeah, it's a great horror adventure film, I feel. So that is Jaws. For K, we do have Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and as ridiculous as that title sounds, you gotta admit, it does sound like a fun title, and that's exactly what this movie is. A bunch of clowns who are really aliens, they're just disguised as clowns, come down to planet Earth and try and wrap people up in cotton candy, get them on their spaceship, and sort of harvest them for food. Yeah, it's a ridiculous concept, it's a ridiculous sounding title, but man, I have to say, you don't have much of a sense of humour if you do not like this movie. Of course, that is subjective, but I just have a lot of fun with this film. It takes place in like a small town America. It's got B-movie cheese all over it, but it knows exactly what it is. It is a self-aware movie. I just have a real fun time seeing these clowns, what look absolutely hilarious, run around and just cause havoc. I mean, it's definitely a horror comedy, of course, but horror comedies are sure allowed in this list, aren't they? Killer Clowns from Outer Space, man, it's just a fun time. It's got a bit of a following now over the years. You know, it's growing some appreciation. We're even getting a video game of it coming soon, so it shows how popular it is. If you haven't seen this one, definitely give it a go. It's a lot of fun. So that is Killer Clowns from Outer Space. For L, we do have The Lost Boys, my favourite vampire flick of all time. This is one I grew up with. I've watched it so many times. I've done my top 10 most rewatchable horror movies, and this was quite high on the list if I remember correctly. I'll leave that link for the video down below if you want to go and check that out. This is basically about two brothers, Sam and Michael, who go and visit their grandfather. They're going to stay with him in the town of Santa Carla, which is the murder capital of the world. And it's the murder capital of the world because Kiefer Sutherland, who plays David, and his little gang of vampires are causing havoc around this sort of seaside town, if you like. And it's got so many great characters in this movie. The Frog Brothers, David and his gang himself, Michael and Sam are just great characters, you know, who you really do get behind. You root for Sam when he wants to save his brother, who's sort of turning into a vampire slowly but surely. And, you know, it's just got a lot of comedy, a lot of black comedy in there that totally works. But there's so many gore scenes as well, like the scene where David and his friends show up at the party, you know, on that campfire party, and take everyone out just to show Michael what they really are about, and they mean business. It's a really, really fun time with a killer soundtrack, and I absolutely love that song, I Still Believe, by Tim Capello. I used to play that song constantly on the soundtrack, along with Lost in the Shadows. It's just a real fun movie. It's got 80s written all over it. This is the definitive horror movie of the 80s, if you like, or one of them. So yeah, gotta throw The Lost Boys in there. One of my most rewatched movies of all time. Coming for M, we do have Ari Aster's Midsummer. Now, I did watch Hereditary, and I instantly wanted to check out the next thing that Ari Aster was going to make, because I thought it was a phenomenal debut. It just missed out on my letter H year, of course, for Halloween. But Midsummer, man, I really don't know which movie is better. It's so hard. If these are the two movies that I just can't pick between. I know they're slightly different, but same director, of course. This sees Florence Pugh travel to this sort of culted community in, I think it's Sweden, if I remember correctly, and it's never dark there. This is a horror movie that takes place in broad daylight. When they get there, these cultists kind of have hatching a plan for all these characters, really. And Florence Pugh, there's a bit of family history shown at the start of the movie, which absolutely is just really shocking to see, and that sort of plays a part in the becoming of her, the unraveling of her character, and how she connects with this community as well. But there's so many what the fuck moments in this, like the old couple throwing themselves off the mountain and stuff because they believe they have to sacrifice themselves and stuff like that. It takes a lot of inspiration from the Wicker Man, but in all honesty, I prefer this over the Wicker Man. I'm not going to lie, I do, guys. And Ari Aster just made two solid bangers with his first two films here. And it's one of them movies that you just can't take your eyes off. Now, I know this is a bit of a love or hate it movie. I've recommended this to people and they were like, that's the biggest load of crap I've ever seen. But for me, this just totally works. It feels like something a little bit different, even though it takes inspiration from The Wicker Man. I just got some crazy feelings from it. And by the end, I was like, wow, I just went on an absolute journey there. I was so excited to check out Ari Aster's next movie, Beau Was Afraid. And unfortunately, that was a bit of a disappointment for me. Should have named that movie Disappointment Boulevard, which is the original title, because that's exactly what it was. But I'm still intrigued to check out what he can do next. I hope he goes back to more horror roots like this and Hereditary, and gives us something special again, because man, this is an absolutely incredible film and one of the best modern horror movies out there. So that is Midsummer. Next up, we have A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, The Dream Warriors. Yes, not the original. I definitely prefer Nightmare on Elm Street 3. This is one of the first horror movies I ever watched. This is arguably the whole reason I'm into the horror genre, because of this film. And my dad brought home that VHS from the car boot sale. I just watched it on loop. And this is such a fun sequel, mainly down to the characters, because they're all experiencing the same dream within this mental hospital, but they've all got cool, different personalities, and they're trying to get to the bottom of this, why Freddy is coming for them in their dreams. And then we do get the legendary character Nancy coming in, played by Heather Langenkamp, who's there to help them defeat Freddy once and for all. And I like how these characters can go into their dreams and become their own sort of superhero, if you like. You got Taryn, who's a great character, by the way, and she's just like badass with these knives and this punk style hairdo. And you got Kincaid, who can just bend metal bars and stuff, and he's just super strong. We've got the Wizard Master, of course. But I like how Freddy kills a lot of the characters in this movie to do with their personalities as well. Like there's this Jennifer character who wants to be on TV all the time, and Freddy throws her head through the TV set.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch.
And you got like the Taryn, who's an ex-drug user, and he stabs the needle hands into her arms and stuff. It's a great movie. It's such a fun time. Freddy is so dark in this, but humorous as well. It's the perfect balance between dark and humor. It doesn't go too comedic. He's telling all these like dark jokes. They're nasty jokes, if you like, before he kills these characters. It's just a great movie, man. I absolutely love Elm Street Part 3, and definitely the best in the franchise for me. So that's Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, The Dream Warriors. For O, we do have The Omen, an absolute classic from the 70s. And we do have the first Omen coming soon, so I'm going to be revisiting this franchise and reviewing them on the channel. I've checked out the first three. I think they're all a pretty solid trilogy. Yet to check out the fourth one. I've heard so many bad things. I just haven't got to that movie yet, unfortunately. but this time I'll probably get to it. However, the first Omen is definitely where it's at, where we see this young boy who, he's definitely got a mysterious evil presence going on about him. Like every time he's going towards churches or he's surrounded by characters of faith, he kind of freaking out a little bit. He kind of doesn't want to be in that situation. So you know something's not quite right, especially when characters are sort of killing themselves around this kid, like the nurse who throws herself out the window at Damien's birthday party and says, "This is all for you, Damien." And I like how the movie slowly unravels this mystery about Satan's son, basically, and, you know, the plans that Satan's kind of got for this kid who's leading up to world domination, as we see across the trilogy, really. But there's so many great scenes in this movie. Like I said, the woman throwing herself out the window. We got David Warner's decapitation scene. He's a great actor, by the way. He's great in this. But, man, that is an unforgettable moment taken out by that big glass panel. Oh, my God, man. I mean, one of the best death scenes in a movie. You know, and his parents are at the forefront of what is trying to go on, what is going on with this kid, and trying to get to the bottom of it. It's a real good, you know, sort of demonic movie, if you like, and one that is just one of the most important horror movies in horror movie history. So for I gotta go for The Omen. Such a great film. Next up, we do have Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. We all go a little mad sometimes. Now, this has probably got to be in my top 3 horror movies of all time. Every time I watch it, it just seems to get better and better. Alfred Hitchcock with an absolute masterclass in film directing here, especially for the time in 1960. This follows this young woman who's a bit on the run. She's not the perfect protagonist to get behind. She's done a little bit of a bad deed there, and she ends up at the Bates Motel, and she ends up meeting Norman Bates, played by Anthony Perkins, who is absolutely wonderful in this movie, by the way. He's like this real, you know, charming guy, but there's certain things about him that you just don't quite, you know, there's certain red flags here and there. And she ends up at this motel, and the movie kind of flips on its head halfway through there, which I'm guessing around that time was unheard of. And it kind of throws you off. I mean, even if you're watching this for the first time today, you won't quite believe that they went down that path. But this is all delving into this character, you know, this Norman Bates character who's just got a few screws loose. And I love the whole location of the Bates Motel, like where all these sinister things have been happening down the years, and the mystery around Norman and his mother, what's going on with them two there. You know, she's always shouting him from the house and stuff. And he's very, very protective of his mother. So, you know, something is strangely going on with that relationship. And when it's all uncovered towards the end, man, what a twist that would have been in 1960, especially for, you know, people who just watched it for the first time. Unfortunately, I didn't know the twist going into this movie because it had been so many years. But Alfred Hitchcock himself actually stood outside cinemas, I've heard, and told people not to give the ending away and stuff who were coming out to cinema, because it must have been so impactful. But Psycho, man, probably the best black and white movie ever made, alongside It's a Wonderful Life for me personally. It's just a brilliant film, and one that absolutely flies by when you're watching it. Brilliant, brilliant filmmaking, brilliantly directed, an absolute joy to watch. So that is Psycho. Next up, we do have A Quiet Place Part 2. Yes, a lot of people do prefer the first movie, but for me, I went to the cinema to watch this, and it was one of the most unforgettable cinema experiences I've ever had. And I just want to thank everyone who was in that cinema screen with me for keeping so quiet during this movie, because it just enhanced the experience. And that is how it's meant to be watched, in total, you know, quietness, really. Because this is about the earth, you know, the post-apocalyptic world, really, because these sort of monsters have taken over, and you make one little sound, these monsters will take you out instantly. That's what they thrive on. They thrive on you making a noise and just coming to rip you to shreds, basically. And I like how it all goes back to day one. I don't know how they're quite going to do that in A Quiet Place day one again, because we've kind of already seen it done really well in this movie, and John Krasinski really directed the movie well. I mean, he directed the shit out of it. And we've got Emily Blunt there and her family just trying to survive. And she's meeting up with these newish characters who are introduced, like Cillian Murphy, who's excellent in this film as well. But I like the whole family dynamic of them sort of growing into the world, growing stronger, learning how to deal with these, you know, these monsters and just trying to survive. However, they are on a little bit on edge because there's a little newborn baby with them and stuff. And you just feel like at any moment these things can pounce. Really, really loved the abrupt ending as well. And I thought that was set up perfectly for the third one. But it does seem like this new one might be a prequel. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Going by the title, it absolutely says it is. But man, I think John Krasinski made two perfect films here. Well, not perfect, but two really great horrors here. I just prefer the second one a little bit more, especially for that cinema experience. So, yeah, for Q, A Quiet Place Part 2. For R, we do have Rosemary's Baby. Now, this is an absolute stone cold classic. I believe it's from 1968. I stand corrected if it's not, but I'm sure it's 1968. And this hasn't really aged. When I watched it, I was totally fixated on the screen. And this is about Mia Farrow's character, Rosemary, and her husband who move into this apartment. And, you know, the neighbours sort of take a liking to them. Rosemary is actually pregnant. And the movie kind of moves at a slow pace. But there is something building there. Like, there's something not quite right with the residents of this building who are very over-friendly. However, her husband has taken a huge liking to them and stuff, so she just kind of gets on board with it all and just thinks they're just nice people and stuff. However, you just know in the back of your mind something is going on here. And it's very, very hard to describe this movie because it is all made for the ending. The last 10 minutes of this film is what makes this entire movie. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not boring or anything like that throughout the film. You are sitting there with a sense of mystery all the way throughout it. It keeps you invested, it keeps you intrigued. But the last 10 minutes absolutely blew me away. And I was like, holy shit, that was just worth the wait. It's the perfect example of a movie sort of unravel itself in the climax. It's just worth the weight in gold, basically. So Rosemary's Baby, it's an absolute classic. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. One of the greatest horror movies ever made. And I gotta say, man, Mia Farrow is absolutely excellent in this film. For S, we do have The Shining, a movie that absolutely terrified me again as a kid. I remember just these weird images that Stanley Kubrick was putting on screen, like the blood coming out the elevator, the two twins flashing on the screen. I was like, holy shit, I am creeped out to hell here. And it's still quite chilling to this day every time I watch it, even though I know what's coming. And I remember some of the scary scenes happening in this movie, and then the movie would just go black and it would say Tuesday on the screen, and I was sitting in a pitch black room. I was like, holy shit, please hurry up with the movie, get this still image with Tuesday off the screen. But this basically follows Jack Torrance and his wife Wendy and his son Danny, who go and stay at this hotel to mind it over the winter holiday, the winter break, for 5 months. And he sees this as a perfect opportunity to get some writing done because he's a struggling writer, and he just thinks it'll be good for the family. However, some sinister things have happened at this hotel, and Jack Torrance starts to lose his mind a little bit, and Jack Nicholson plays him so wonderfully. He is amazing in this movie.
I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in. I'm gonna bash him right the fuck in.
But there's so many just mysterious things happening in the hotel that really creep you out. Room 237, oh my god. I'll never forget that scene the first time I watched it, man. You think they're alone in this hotel, and then this happens, and you're like, holy shit. Great music, you know, fantastically well directed by Stanley Kubrick. You can tell he's a master of his craft. It's all on show here in The Shining, one of his best directed movies, I feel. And Stephen King did not like this film, of course. I mean, that's not really an unheard of fact, really. He just didn't gel with it. And him and Stanley Kubrick kind of had fallings out with. But I think Stanley Kubrick's vision definitely worked for the big screen. So yeah, The Shining, one of the greatest horror movies ever made, probably in my top 3 of all time. So that is The Shining. For tea, we do have the greatest horror film ever made, in my opinion, and that is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from Tobe Hooper, his absolute masterpiece. I never know where to start with this movie because I just have so many great things to say about it. This follows a group of teenagers who go and visit the old house where two of them used to live as kids, or they used to visit the grandma there, in the outback of Texas, and they come across Leatherface and his deranged Sawyer family. And this is something that feels very real. Like, it's a movie that has such a realistic feel to it. And I think that's what makes the movie scary, because these people who are living in the outback of Texas, Leatherface and stuff, they're real people. And you wouldn't put it past a group of deranged family members living in the outback of Texas now, would you? Carving people up and eating them, of course. They are cannibals. You just wouldn't. You couldn't, for the fact, say that wouldn't happen, because there are some real psychopaths out there, as this movie shows. And I think it's got one of the greatest horror movie moments ever made in this movie, where you got Pam, who walks into the house and she sees Leatherface. She runs out and he just pulls her back into the darkness. I never get tired of seeing that scene. Something that has really grew on me over the years is Sally, her character, when she's screaming at the dinner table. I used to really hate that scene, but now it's grew on me so much. I actually appreciate the scene. It's one of the best things about the film, where Tobe Hooper's filming her eyeballs and stuff, and she's so strained. And that was a 24-hour shoot because they only had one day of film left, so you can tell she is mentally drained. And it just I know at the time she probably hated that, but it just shows in her performance. Leatherface, a horror icon. He's played so well by Gunnar Hansen here. I love the hitchhiker, I love the cook. I just love this movie. It's one that flies by. It's only 80 minutes long, but man, it's such a joyride to go on. I've seen it at the cinema. I own the 4K. I've seen it numerous times. One of my most watched movies of all time. And for me, the greatest horror movie of all time. Tobe Hooper is absolute masterpiece. That is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. For you, I've gone with Us. Now, Jordan Peele is not really a director I froth at the mouth at. I mean, I thought Get Out was good, but I'd seen the ending coming about 30 minutes in, and I wasn't a big fan of Nope. I do plan on rewatching that, but I just wasn't a big fan of it at the cinema. However, Us, for me, is personally my favourite movie of his. I know a lot of people may think that's sacrilege. I'm like, why didn't you put Get Out on G? But for me, this one just worked a hell of a lot better. Now, I have heard a lot of people say that this movie lacks logic and stuff, and maybe if I go back and rewatch it, I will see that. But I thought it was a really clever film about, these doppelgangers who turn up at this family's house, their front door, and that is a terrifying aspect on its own, isn't it? I just thought there were so many creepy scenes in this film, especially with the family turning up at the house. But when the movie all unravels and stuff, I was like, holy shit, I did not see that coming whatsoever. It's got a great opening as well at the fairground, and that really worked for me. And I just think Jordan Peele done a great job of this. It was like something I hadn't seen. It was something fresh and original at the time. So for me, I just thought it was a wonderful film, and maybe on rewatch I might change my mind a little bit with the logic issues, but for now, this is still my favourite Jordan Peele film. So that is Us. For V, we do have Vacancy, starring Luke Wilson and Kate Beckinsale. Really cool cast there. And this is about them two who find this vacant motel, and they go and sit in the room and they see a bunch of videotapes, and they throw the videotape on thinking it's this slasher movie. And when it comes on, they realise that the couples who are being killed in this tape are being killed in the very room that they are in. And it's not a slasher movie at all. It's a real-life snuff film. And they start to panic a little bit and have to find a way out of this hotel with these people who come after them and want them to be the next victims on the next tape. It's a really fun film, really cool concept. As soon as I heard about it, I knew I had to watch it. And we've got a really sinister receptionist here who you just know there's something not right about him straight away. Now, it's just one of them cat and mouse films that I think is definitely worth a watch. It's such a fun movie, and yeah, I definitely recommend it if you haven't seen it. That is Vacancy. For W, we do have The Wolfman. Personally, for me, the greatest werewolf movie of all time. I know An American Werewolf in London is a lot of people's favourite, and it is a close second. But I first watched this a couple of years ago, and I was kind of blown away, especially by Lon Chaney's performance as the Wolfman himself. But this is a tip, like, if you're going to think of a Wolfman film or a werewolf movie, you're going to think Full Moon, you're going to think Dark Woods, and you're going to think transformation scene. But that has it all. This is the most stereotypical Wolfman movie you could think of. It's what started it all with the werewolf movies, from my knowledge anyway. And it just has that total classic universal monster feel to it. It's such a joy to watch, but you feel like you're watching a piece of cinema history here, and you really are. And for me, this is the best universal monster movie. Absolutely love it. It just totally works. And there's a bit of a romance in there that works well within the film story as well. But Lon Chaney Jr., man, he's so awesome in this film. And I've only seen it the once, but I definitely want to give it another go, especially this year with The Wolfman coming out. I'll probably review it on the channel, but I just remember absolutely loving this film. So yeah, really excited to check this one out again. I think it's fantastic. So definitely give The Wolfman a go if you're ever thinking about delving into these older horror movies, because I think this is one that is less dated than some of them, and it still totally works. For X, we do have X, yes, from Ty West. Now, I was thinking about X, the man with the X-ray eyes, but no, I've gone with X because this is one of my favourite movies of 2022, I believe. One of my favourite A24 films, and of course, we've got the sequel Pearl, we've got the sequel Maxine coming, which I'm really excited for, but Mia Goth is an absolute superstar, isn't she? And this is no exception in this film as well, where they're playing two parts, but this is about a bunch of characters who go and rent this farmhouse out from this couple, and they're sort of making pornographic films in there because we are in the 70s era, and I think it's like become very popular, and these girls want to be in the porn films. There's so many great characters in this. Kate Cudi is the standout performer alongside Mia Goth. I was like, holy shit, is that Kate Cudi putting in an absolute powerhouse performance? And as the movie goes on, it does turn into a little bit of a slasher movie regarding this old couple. There's something not quite right with them. But yeah, I love the whole visual look from Ty West. It definitely feels like a 70s movie. I mean, he's done another film called The House at the End, The House of the Devil, which was all set in the 70s as well, and he nails that time period. I think this is probably the era he grew up in or something, or I'm guessing, because he just gets that visual look, and it totally works here as well. So yeah, X is a wonderful film, and one of the best modern horror movies I've seen in years. Can't wait to rewatch this and Pearl when the time Maxine comes out, and I'll do a little ranking of all three of them on the channel. But yeah, fantastic film. Definitely worth a go. And you can tell he took a little bit of inspiration from Texas Chainsaw Massacre in this. It had that feel about it. So that is X. Next up, we have You're Next. Now, this is a great home invasion movie turned on its head, where these bunch of masked maniacs gate crash a family party, I believe it was, and they start to like kill people off. However, this main female protagonist, played by Shawnee Vision, I think her name is Erin, it's been a while since I watched it, sort of comes back at them and starts to take them out one by one. And there's so many great kills in here. I remember someone getting a big knife in their head, stuck in their head and stuff. There's blood on the screen. And after it, I just thought, man, she was badass. What a great final girl, you know, to be brave and just take these motherfuckers on. So a home invasion film turned on its head. And there wasn't really anything else I could put for why, but that doesn't mean that this is the bad the good pick from the bad bunch, because this is an absolutely awesome film from what I remember. So yeah, home invasion film turned slasher, I think. So if that's your type of thing, definitely give this a go. That is You're Next. And lastly for Z, we do have Zombie Flesh Eaters. Now this is a total retro zombie movie, as I like to call them. You know them old zombie films that, you know, like came out around the time of Dawn of the Dead and stuff, where zombies were just really, really slow and stuff, but there was like that sort of synthetic music and stuff like that going on in the background. That's Zombie Flesh Eaters. There's even a fight with a zombie and a shark here, which is awesome. This all takes place on this island, and these zombies are sort of infesting it, really, and coming after them all. I love how the zombie rises from the grave at one point. That is so well done on the camera. I loved all that. And there's some really, you know, gory scenes in this one involving an eyeball, which was cool to watch. And I loved how all of the theme works within the movie. Like, there's constant music going on in this film as it plays out, but it just totally works. So I had a really fun time with Zombie Flesh Eaters. I've watched it many times now, and it's just a really fun zombie film. One of the best zombie films ever made, in my opinion. Absolutely love it. It's a bunch of fun. And like I said, a total retro zombie movie. So that is Zombie Flesh Eaters. Okay guys, hope you all enjoyed this best of horror A to Z video. What would you have instead of some of the movies I picked? Do you agree with my picks? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll get back to you all, I promise. If horror is your sort of thing, please give this video a like and subscribe to this channel. It really helped me out. Thanks so much guys, and if you want like top 10s or anything like that, they'll be in the link down below. You all take care, and I'll see you on the next video.